What is good, Raider Nation? It's your boy Raider Alex, back with yet another video for you guys. Anybody that's new to the channel, you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. That being said, let's jump right into the topic of this video. Today I wanted to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders defense thus far after 2 weeks of the regular season. And after 2 weeks, I feel like the Las Vegas Raiders is a mixed bag. After 2 weeks, the Raiders sit at 1-1, and while the defense, in my opinion, has emerged as the strength of this team thus far, there are still several key areas where they are struggling. Despite solid individual performances on the defensive side of the football from players like Maxx Crosby, Robert Spillane, overall Christian Wilkins has been pretty good in the run game. But despite solid individual performances, there are some troubling stats that I've noticed with the Raiders defense. And the first is the rushing defense. Thus far, it seems like a major concern. Going into the preseason, we were struggling against the run. I was hoping that was just preseason and it wasn't going to translate into the regular season, but throughout the first 2 weeks, the Raiders have struggled against the run. Currently, the Raiders rank 29th overall, and the team is giving up about 163 rushing yards per game. That is pretty alarming. This, in my opinion, is the major weakness of this defense, and so far throughout 2 weeks, opposing teams have consistently found success on the ground against the Raiders, and their inability to stop the run is just putting extra pressure on this defense, forcing them to stay on the field longer, get more tired, and making it harder to close out opponents. And what I noticed so far with this rushing defense is week one, I feel like overall they were good against the run, but their biggest issue was they gave up 2 big runs, and that just completely skewed the final statistics in the rushing game. But still, you can't give up those big runs, and one of those was a big touchdown by J.K. Dobbins to seal the game in week one. Last week versus the Ravens, they were pretty good against the run in the first half, but in the second half, that's when running back Derrick Henry started to do some damage on the ground. And overall, they rushed for about 160 yards. And when it comes to total defense in terms of yards allowed, the Raiders currently rank 23rd, allowing approximately 350 yards per game. While this isn't, one of the worst in the league, it's clear that there's still plenty of improvement from this team. Opposing offenses have been able to move the ball consistently, and a big part of this statistic is our lack of ability to stop the run, because so far the bright spot of this Raiders defense is the passing side of things. This is one area where the Raiders are ranked 15th overall, allowing just 186 passing yards per game, and this has been a critical factor in their ability to stay competitive in football games, especially as opposing offenses have struggled to exploit this secondary. And while we're here, I just want to give a huge shout out to the defensive back room, starting with the cornerbacks. Jack Jones and Jakorian Bennett have looked fantastic out there. Jakorian Bennett, to start with, so far in these first 2 weeks, he's had 2 big pass breakups, has shown very solid coverage. Same thing with Jack Jones. He's been good against the run. And one thing that I feel like not many people are talking about in last week's victory was Jack Jones had a big play along the sideline that isn't really being talked about right now. The Raiders are up 26-23, and Lamar Jackson was almost able to complete a catch to Isaiah Likely along the sideline, and Jack Jones had the awareness and laid out a big hit on Isaiah Likely, jarring the ball loose. Now that would have been a tough catch to make, but if Isaiah Likely would have came down with that grab, he would have got out of bounds. We know the Baltimore Ravens have a kicker that can easily make 50, 55-yard field goals, and that very likely would have put him in that field goal range and possibly extended this game to overtime. And if that happens, who knows if we're having this conversation, the Raiders might be 0-2. So that was a huge play from Jack Jones. He's also been good against the run, and the secondary group has looked good thus far. They haven't been great, but they're definitely getting the job done. Trayvon Merrick almost had an interception week one, but there's no doubt this secondary group has been the focal point, the bright spot on this Raiders defense. Maxx Crosby's definitely helping him out. He's doing everything he can to get as much pressure on the quarterback as he can. And the last statistic I wanted to talk about thus far is points allowed. So far, the Raiders are holding steady in this aspect. In terms of points per game average, the Raiders rank 19th in the NFL, giving up an average of about 22.5 points per game. This is solid, but I would like it to be better as the season goes along. This is one of the key statistics in my opinion. Sure, you can give up a lot of yards, passing or rushing, but what wins you football games is points on the board. So although we're not dominant thus far in this aspect, this shows that the Raiders defense has been doing just enough to keep games within reach so far. So currently the Raiders defense has overall looked good, but we still have some glaring issues that we need to address. And one clear aspect that's holding us back thus far is the fact that the Raiders defense still is not at full strength. The fact that defensive end Malcolm Koonce got injured before the start of the season is a big blow to this team. He's been put to the injury reserve. In 2023, he broke out on the opposite side of Max Crosby. The Raiders got a legit defensive tackle in Christian Wilkins, but unfortunately with that injury, we have yet to see the three-headed monster on the defensive line play together. So I think if Malcolm Koonce can come back at some point in the season and come close to his form that he had last season, then this should help everything for this Raiders defense. Ultimately, the regular season is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And the Malcolm Koonce injury is something we're going to have to keep an eye on, because if the injury appears to be worse than what we initially expected, at first people were estimating that he might have been out a month, so like the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. But if it seems like it's going to be an even bigger injury, then the Raiders may have to look at a possible in-season trade before the deadline for a defensive end. And unfortunately for us, our first round pick in 2023, Tyree Wilson, is injured as well. And really, if he wasn't injured, I mean, he still hasn't really shown a significant improvement in his development, which is definitely super underwhelming. But that's going to be one of the key things for this Raiders defense is who's going to step up on the edge. Will Malcolm Koonce be able to be back soon and get back to his old ways? And it's clear that the Raiders have to find a way to improve against the run. If the Raiders look to build on this one-on-one start and complete for a playoff spot, we need to be able to shore up the defense up front. But one thing I do gotta consider is the season is early. And if we look at the opponents we've been going against, I mean, they've been teams that have been able to move the football effectively. The Ravens are #1 overall in yards per game thus far. So they've shown they can move the football up and down the field. They did better against the Kansas City Chiefs defense than they did against ours. And the Chiefs defense was an elite unit last season. It was a big reason why they won the Super Bowl. And we've struggled against the run. But a part of that is that the LA Chargers have been dominant running the football. Currently, they are ranked 2nd overall in the National Football League in rushing yards per game. And the Ravens are currently number 7th overall. And it's going to be hard because they have a dual threat in Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So this may be a factor into why the Raiders have been struggling against the run. It might just be an unlucky scenario where they've been going against the best teams in this aspect. But the good news for the Raiders defense is this week 3 against the Carolina Panthers, this is going to be a huge opportunity to kill this narrative, to get confidence in stopping the run as they go against the Carolina Panthers, who are 29th overall in rushing attack and 32nd overall in offensive yards per game. So like I said, this is going to be a huge opportunity for the Raiders defense to have a dominant performance out there and help just build some confidence moving forward into this season. I still think the Raiders defense is going to be the strength of this team as we progress throughout the season. I think more times than not, we're going to have to rely on them and lean on them to get victories. So I think this is going to be key for us moving forward. And like I said, I hope to see a dominant performance next week against the Panthers. But Raider Nation, let me know what you guys think of the current state of the defense. Do you guys think we're in good hands? Or is there anything that concerns you thus far? Let me know in that comment section down below. But with that being said, Raider Nation, that's all for you guys in today's video. Anybody that's new to the channel, you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. That being said, I will see you guys in the next one.